And then we drop that because we want to act like we know what we're doing, guys. Welcome to whatever we ended up calling this, Chatting Round the Fireside.
That's what it is for now.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
So, joining, we've got 3 well-known TSL personalities. I'm muting other things that are going on because I'm an idiot.
That's a generous word, by the way. Personalities.
No.
Yeah.
Local idiot
Right.
joined by 3
I
well-known
don't have
TSL
one of those.
personalities. Mark Carico, the messiah of reverse grip. Alec Martinez, the man with all the fitness knowledge, and then we've got David. So we're just here hanging
And
out,
Tristan. Don't forget Tristan.
Oh yeah, and Sir Tristan, the king of all the cats. So we're here just goofing off. The 4 of us like to goof in, or at least I like to goof in their streams. Hopefully they enjoy me goofing in their stream. But this is just an excuse for us
Absolutely
to hang out
do.
and actually talk to one another. So here we go.
It's mostly just trolling.
Mostly. Should have called this Under the Bridge. We're a bunch of trolls.
There you go.
Actually, I like that. That's a good one. You gotta
We
switch
did not
over to
workshop
that.
any names for this.
No.
Nope.
No, why would we? Where's the fun in that?
Right. So, as you can see, we have delicious spicy graphics. I made them myself. So, and that's about it, guys. I'm going to stop BSing and talking. I'm going to let Mark talk because Mark likes to talk the most. I'm going to take a sip of coffee.
Hey, we already have Kevin Curtis on the Discord. You can chat on the Discord in the live events chat as well as Facebook and YouTube. So it says hello, handsome
Never
gentlemen.
answered my question. What's Discord?
All right, here we
What
go.
is Discord?
David, Discord 101 right now. Let's go.
You don't want me answering that question because it's like, to me, it's a social media that exists around gaming, but is transitioning beyond gaming. There's servers that then have channels. They don't do that anymore. Well, they're pushing away. Their business model's changing. That's all I'm gonna say. Basically, I look at it as
I have no idea.
It's more like a forum setup as opposed to the Facebook where everything is a feed, if that makes sense.
So what you're saying is the internet's gone full circle, and we're back to forums.
Basically,
no, we didn't go back to forums. It's just that they never went anywhere. So.
But
it's just
forums,
that
we just weren't
mostly
cool enough
got
to
killed
be in
off
them.
by instant message.
It's just I think it's just a better methodology to track, categorize and track things as opposed to Facebook's one size fits all news feed. We can easily categorize different things, and you can go I want to look at fitness stuff. I got a fitness question. I want to look at saber questions or gear questions.
To that.
You should, because we really need to get the
but you can do that on Facebook.
Going on it. You can do it on Facebook, but the problem is that if you do that and then you go on to the Facebook group and you look at it once and then you say, I'm going to comment on that later, it literally disappears. Well, not literally. It figuratively disappears from your feed, and it's just not as nice as it used to be. Like when Facebook allowed you to look chronologically, it made a lot of sense. But
isn't it the same thing? If for Discord, you would have to click on a group, say fitness, then scroll down to the post you want to comment on. On Facebook, you click on a group, say fitness, and then scroll down to the post you want to comment on.
The thing is
yes, but it's
the same thing.
A giant catch-all, and here we have so many subcategories. Like I think yesterday, Jerry Chubb wanted a channel just for looking at that fit, seeing how good that fit is in your TSL gear. I'm trying to sound like the youth, using the word fit.
I thought we were literally talking about how well it fits. I get it now.
No, that's what I thought. No, I'm still confused. I live on a hill in the middle of nowhere in Arizona. I'm confused.
It's got fun community building stuff. Me and one of the Florida folks have taken to calling every East Coast charter. We've got the Southeast, which is Florida, the Mid-Atlantic, which is Middle Florida, and then the Northeast, which is Florida's Hat or Top Florida.
That's fair.
And then what is California enemy of Florida?
Yeah, apparently that's what's going to happen. The 2 charters will become just California and Florida.
Mm-hmm.
That
So
makes sense.
Oregon and
That's the right way to
Washington, you belong to us now.
I feel like it has
all
more
your
room for
charter
nonsense.
belong to us.
That's just Northern California, David.
Pretty much.
Like,
What state of
Arizona,
Jefferson or whatever
I
they
might
call
as
it?
well be in the charter. Something. Oh yeah, state of Jefferson. I used to have one of those flags. Yeah, that's a different discussion.
No. I'm not trying to bring it into that. That's just a whole they want to split California into 3 states, and it's like, that's just
Forever?
Oh, it was 2 when I was living there.
Think of all the flag.
They're up to 3 now.
Mark, think of the flag that you'd have to replace if they added 3 more stars to it. Like
It would just be ugly. Well, I have a 48 state one down there, which is actually
it wouldn't
funny
be 3. I
because
guess it would be
found
2
in a thrift
stars.
store. Right. I found it in a thrift store down in one of the towns around here, and it's a 48 state flag, which means it's older than Arizona, which is the state I bought it in.
Well,
Because
it wouldn't be older than
Arizona
Arizona
was
because
49th.
Alaska and Hawaii
Alaska, Hawaii.
are the last 2. 1950s.
No, it's the flag before Arizona came. It's not a 48 then.
The 47.
I don't remember I guess.
45?
Hell if I know. 45.
I'm not
I don't
an
know.
expert.
They tend to
I'm not an expert on my
here's a state,
but-
here's a state, here's a state, here's 10 states, here's 5 states, here's a state.
I'll sum
they
it up
come
with
in
the
random
Simpsons
batches.
quote. I'll be
course
I'll be
you
dead in the grave before I recognize Missouri. So
I mean, that's fair. I don't know.
well, that was in direct reference
Yeah.
to the flag. They had an old flag that was essentially not the right amount of stars, and it was some weird time before this was the state and that was the state, and it was only less than a year difference between that they printed up this flag that they had hanging in the school. So
Oh boy.
Fair enough. I tried to watch The Simpsons just to get all your references, and since Disney Plus likes to cut things out of shows, I still don't get all your references. Then I watched
they
them
didn't
all
cut
in a 1-month time period, and that's it.
There's nothing cut with the exception of one episode. There's nothing cut from Disney Plus. It's actually full.
I thought you were
episodes.
saying there was more cut.
No.
There's a lot of stuff I don't like.
That's a different conversation.
remember
That's more when I grew up, and Fox would have reruns, before the nightly news or something like that, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and I would watch because I had 2 Fox affiliates where I lived. I would watch literally an hour and a half of The Simpsons and a half hour of Seinfeld, or something else, depending on what year, part of the year it was. But and essentially they would always cut little things to get another commercial break in there. So there's all these little references that I didn't watch until I got them on DVD, and was able to watch them. So there's just little things that are cut out of entire shows, and that's just for syndication. So it's not
Gotcha.
on Disney Plus. The only thing that's cut is a
the Disney
King of
Plus
Pop, certain King of Pop
are the
episode.
TV
That's the only one
ones.
cut. Yes, and you
So
can watch them in the
okay.
4:3 aspect ratio as well. If you don't,
So
that's the other
they're
thing.
cut compared to the DVD, but not cut compared to what was on TV. Gotcha. Now I'm caught up.
No, that's
Fair enough.
well, syndication, not original.
I don't
airing,
know what that
syndication.
means. I know what a
Meaning when you
syndication
air
is. I don't know what syndication is.
Yes, reruns, sir. If
It's
that
just
makes
like,
sense.
See, why don't you just use English to start off?
It's just like
I understood it.
I use the industry talk.
Well, you're cool.
He uses
or
the right
something.
words.
right. Mark, language means
Those aren't the
things.
right words.
Words mean things.
No.
Yeah, there's only one episode missing from
Yes,
Disney,
they
and that's and from Disney Plus, and that's gone everywhere. So that's it. So
Except YouTube. Probably find it on YouTube.
well, it's on DVD too as well. But
Ah.
yeah, if you can. Well, the DVD's probably not in print anymore, but I have the first 8 seasons on DVD.
How many seasons do you have on DVD?
I have 9. I stopped at 9 because it was just getting too ridiculous.
Ah, you need another, 22 now?
Every season of Stargate.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, you should. That's just a better
So what do you-
show
what
in
do you-
general.
What do you
So-
think about Amazon buying MGM? If I'm gonna, let's take this into the news, Mark, because the Stargate
I didn't
creator
know that
says
happened.
Well, they said they're going to do it. They announced it, and that could mean Stargate because I think
Amazon does like
Bezos is
to
a fan,
bring things back.
and the creator of Stargate
like-
said they're going to try to push for it. So,
Well, they've been
I mean,
talking about a
I'll
new
watch it.
series for a while. Yeah, I'll watch it too. They've been talking about a new series of Stargate for a while. Like I said in one of the live streams where I ranted about Stargate, I really want to see them do not necessarily a recreation of Stargate, just a continuation. Like after Universe, or maybe they tie Universe into it or whatever. But like after all that, just a modern. Well, the Stargate program's been running for 20-something years, and here's where we are now, kind of thing.
That's fair. During my watch of Stargate, I was extremely bummed out to find out Atlantis, not on Netflix.
Really?
it was. I
It's
got it.
on
I watched it all
Amazon, I think.
on Prime. Yeah, everything. Or no. Well, I watched on Hulu, but I don't think it's on Hulu anymore, and that was like a few years ago.
I
So-
know Stargate
I have no idea. Like I said, I have it on DVD,
Prime.
so I've never thought to look for it.
Well, I'm a pleb.
And I
okay?
specifically
Aren't you cool?
watched in the proper order that they all say to watch because they didn't air in order and all that crap too. There's a spreadsheet I think I have access to.
I'm sure there are. Nerds love spreadsheets.
There's always
Well, it's just easier on the first watch because like there are things that aired out of order that were supposed to show in sequence that didn't show in sequence if you just watch it like straight through.
Like
But it's so you
Firefly?
can switch
It's not as
between
bad as
Atlantis
Firefly,
and Stargate. Well, or if you try to
nothing's
watch,
as bad as
if you try to watch,
Firefly.
if you try to watch Buffy or Angel, like that's a whole thing too. They aired that out of order. So if you try, there's literally ones that cross over to one another, and it's like it makes no sense sometimes if you just watch like season 1, episode 1, and then like start to do that whole thing.
I still
Show
haven't watched
order's
those.
interesting thing. It's okay.
I think by the time Atlantis was airing, they did it pretty well because I think by that point they still had crossovers and they all aired in a way that made sense. Thankfully,
Yeah, there's only like a couple in the
SG1
beginning
is
that
a
really get
sitcom
messed up.
anyway. SG1 is
Yeah.
kind of a sitcom anyway, so really, as long as you're in the right season, the same big bad guy is there, it really doesn't matter too much. As
The
long as
time
it's not
loop
a
episode is the best
continued
one.
episode. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Groundhog Day. That was a good one.
how long did they end up being trapped in there because they lost interest in helping?
So I think it's shown, or like they show you, I think, 48 days or something like that.
Because I think
But
at the very
according
end,
to
I
Jack,
think
he
the
lost
theory-
count.
Yeah, at the very end, Sam's dad comes in and says, "We've lost contact with you for this long," and then it pans over to them and they just kind of shrug.
Right. Well, the other thing too is that I don't think it's a full 24-hour loop, so they could
Yeah.
relive because it's just from like Serial to when they go on their mission later that day, and it's Fruit Loops every fucking day, even though
Yeah.
they don't go
Until
get
getting smacked
like
in the
I
face.
would have right until getting smacked in the face. But like if I were Jack, I would look cereal. Let me get pancakes. I'll eat pancakes today and then leave. It's problem solving.
No.
But yeah, till getting smacked in the face, and I love the day where he just like slams the door back on the guy. Just no, I'm done with this. But no, that was a great one.
We haven't been acknowledging the comments, so I'm gonna go back and
What
acknowledge
comments?
them.
I can't see comments. Comments don't
Kay
exist if I can't see them.
Kay asked if Joe can boost your volume a little bit.
I did.
Alicia was saying about the fit, the Utes say it today. That was when we were talking about that. Jerry Chubb was asking about words, what words, like syndication. And then Alicia said, you shut it, Stargate was awesome. Stargate only has 10 seasons, Atlantis 5 and Universe 2. As Jerry said, Alicia said, I didn't catch Universe, Atlantis is also good. And then, sadly, the Dresden Files also suffered from that, part of the reason for its demise. And then also SG1 is pretty much my high school D&D group. So there you go.
Yeah,
Caught up on
no,
the chat,
so
on the
there's
comments. I'll keep up
Ooh,
with
I
those.
would definitely run a Stargate campaign.
It would be awesome. That would be awesome. There's actually one of my buddies in SoCal for 40K. There's like the normal human military faction, and they have a D&D style or RPG game for that. And so he ran it like MASH though. Like everyone likes to run the combat missions and stuff, but he ran it like MASH. The only things they did, the only time you actually played was around the camp, doing shenanigans, things like that. So like I don't know what would be better, because if you did one for Stargate, you would have to have like the off-world missions, but you'd also have to have the Earth time, what's going on Earth. So I think it would be funny to also just do one that's just on Earth. You're just playing like the cleanup or whatever on Earth.
Oh yeah.
But getting back to it, what do you guys mean by fit? I'm confused.
Like your
it's
style,
slang
your
for
look.
outfit.
Yeah. That's a good fit.
So it's just your gear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your
Okay.
look.
That's
Mark, aren't you younger than me?
unnecessary. Yes.
He is younger.
Do you want me to
He is
take
the
the
youngest
camera
one here.
outside and show you how rural I am? Like,
Fair.
I live in the middle of nowhere and don't get out very much. So, which
I
is
grew
what
up
I
where you
want.
could milk cows down the street. I get it.
Yeah, there's plenty of cows when I walk my dog. Although my dog likes to try and fight horses, he would lose those fights so hard.
If you grew up there, you would have had to walk to school through sand dunes, up hills both ways.
It is, yes. Yeah, so the school is actually like 6 miles from here, so that would suck.
Yeah, and that uphill
there's
both
actually-
ways really gets you.
Oh yeah, there's actually like I drive by him occasionally. There's a kid who gets dropped off at the end of the street, which is like 2 miles away, and so he's walking down dirt roads like 2 miles, and it's like, yeah, he could actually tell that to his kids someday.
Yeah. In the
I
desert.
had to walk through the desert.
In the desert.
Hey, it's Sandy.
Fought off a
The
rattlesnake
Arizona
on my way
desert's
home.
something special.
It is. It's not quite moon dust, but it's a pain in the butt to walk around in.
It's just sad gravel.
Yeah.
Well, and then you trample the cryptobiotic crust, and you destroy the ability for the ground to retain water. So that's a whole other story.
Yeah, well, it retains water pretty well up here because we got a fair amount of vegetation, but it turns into cement essentially. Like it gets real hard. So
No, but like the cryptobiotic crust are microbial organisms that essentially help maintain that and help with erosion. And when they get trampled or destroyed, it takes them like almost 100 years to a long time to essentially rebuild themselves. So
you're
my
saying
God,
Tigers
look
are
it up.
the reason that Arizona looks like it does.
potentially, I mean, yeah, why? Like if you compare Arizona to like Utah, Utah has so much more going for it.
I
That makes
live
sense.
like less than an hour from Utah, still haven't been. So
I've been to
Where in
Colorado,
Utah, like St. George, or
I mean that pops up on the map. I don't know what the nearest town is.
St. George is nice. It's a nice town.
Fair enough.
There's some cool
Yeah,
there's some cool parks there. There's a park with lava caves called Snow Canyon State Park. It's really cool, and it's off the beaten path because it's a state park, not a national park.
Surprised
So,
you haven't
Gotcha.
gone to Utah with Fieldcraft opening up their like retail front soon.
That's on the other side of the state. That's on the
Ooh.
northern house. That's like a 8-hour drive.
So you're saying you're not a
It's like a
real,
Uinta thing.
like you don't really support them then?
Right, something like that.
That makes sense.
Well, so I'm like an hour and a half from Vegas. So like and like 30 minutes from the Nevada border. So it's I'm pretty much not in Arizona, but still in Arizona. It's a weird place.
Right.
And like that's another thing that bugs me with charters in TSL, just throwing it out here, is that the rest of the charter, aside from this small group up here, is 4 hours away. Like I have Andy coming out. We're going to do some sparring later, and
Is it
he's coming out
Phoenix or
from
Tucson?
Phoenix.
Oof.
Phoenix.
Well, see,
so
if you
he's
join the
driving- granted,
Discord,
it's like there's no Discord. It doesn't exist.
And if you join the Discord, you see it's divided into regions, and then you can talk with people in your region.
I already do on Facebook. We have a Facebook chat. Like the three
not
of
the
us have a
same, not the
Facebook
same.
chat.
But how
We
do
have
you,
a chat
how do people
entirely
join
about
that?
how we're in the wrong place.
But yeah, no. So Andy's driving 4 hours, still on the same charter, and yeah, whatever. But I'm an hour and a half from Vegas, which is a different charter. It's weird.
I mean,
Does it
weird.
does it matter? We're in different charters
Not
and
really.
we're both champions. You know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it really doesn't matter because hopefully someday there's enough people in TSL that we break all the states down into smaller regional charters anyway because there's enough people and all of that. But
Yeah,
Well, see,
Florida
I would
operates
argue.
mostly by satellites.
Yeah, I would argue an opposite thing that we should, if we can do a regional breakout, we can do a division breakout like like a sports league, and essentially, and then you can have like the West Coast, the Southwest, the Rockies or whatever. Like have all these divisions, get your top fighters from them, and then have like a division, like a division,
and then we'll
essentially.
Like a championship
I would be all in
series.
on that.
Like a championship series, like where you get your top three, and then like the top three fighters from those, and you pair them up. You pick who you're pairing up with, and just another
Well, that's
another way to do it.
I know that's what the Saber Combat League was talking about, is doing it by school essentially. And I think eventually that'd be a great idea.
Different, I more mean
schools
like
are still different because you can have two in the same city or whatever, but.
Well, because it's still like, because like if you go to like say Vancouver, there, how many HEMA schools are in Vancouver? You're talking like
I counted yesterday.
But there's like a whole bunch. I mean, you got I mean, and I say Vancouver in a liberal sense because it's like around the Vancouver area, but like you got like Blood and Iron and Valkyrie and Academy Duello and like all these things, and they're all they're all like large schools, so it's like. I like the regional element because then you can basically say like, okay, let's get the best fighter from Oregon, let's get the best fighter from Northern California, get the best fighter from Southern California, and put them on a team, whereas they would never be on a team in any other way, shape, or form, and then they have to go to say a TSL 5 or some special event, and then go like, hey, we're we're the West Division, and we're gonna go through a playoff essentially, and then we determine who's the best. The best division essentially, the best region, West. And then you can have it. Then you can have an international element. Then you can also do championship series events where the divisions are facing off with one another. So Southwest versus West. You do events like that.
Like
so
tennis kind of.
These are all just like brainstorm thoughts that we've considered. I mean, they're not we have like a million thoughts, and then we throw out 999. 1,000 of them, and then one remains. So,
I think that gives you more than one remaining. I think that gives you like 1,000, 10,000.
I said 999,999. Sorry, I did miss that.
Right.
Yeah, I missed.
Yeah,
I missed 3.
You didn't get your math right there, David.
The school thing.
That's true.
Drives me crazy because I just see at some point, if anybody can have a school, it's going to be like any other place that has a school, and you'll have like TSL McDojos and stuff like that, and that's just not good for anyone.
So I mean, there's a way to
coexist. You already have no formal certification process.
Yeah, there's ways to mix them together. It's just and there's different ways to think about it. It just depends on what you want the community to be, and is that a barrier? If you make schools, that's technically a barrier for entry for some people. Because maybe they had a bad experience. It's anything where you're trying to figure out how to bring people in. So there's multiple schools of thought, and they're just different sandboxes essentially at this point. So
yeah, and then you have to figure out what qualifies as or how do we qualify instructors? Because even the HEMA Alliance, they only do it. You have to submit a curriculum, submit a video of you teaching at least one student that curriculum, and pass a background check, I think, in order to be certified as an instructor. that doesn't really speak to your the quality of the material you're teaching, the quality of the teacher, or anything like that. Anyone can do it. Well, as long as you can pass background check, right? But so would we qualify instructors for TSL? And that gets into a whole different ballgame. And like I've ranted about in a lot of live streams now, is there are a lot of people out there who would like to be called master, who really should never be called master in any kind of bullshit situation. Like,
or any of the terms for master in general.
Right. There's going to be that one guy saying that reverse grip is the best thing ever and everything, one should fight reverse grip, and even if they lose every single fight they fight in, they're going to hold on to that. And so as a group, as TSL, how could we quantify that person cannot be an instructor? Because I don't think
if you want to be called master, you're not allowed to be an instructor.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
At no point of anything I teach in my live streams do I ever say like, yes, this is the only way to do it, and I know exactly, because I'm like, no, these are things I've observed and I can pick up and I know, and here are the tools, not the rules that you can use. So like if someone wants to argue that something's not right, or my interpretation was incorrect or something like that, it's like, this is just an observation. There is a counter to everything I'm saying. Well, almost everything I'm saying. Things like leaning your head forward is pretty straightforward. Don't do it. But there are.
Well, I mean, Fiore would argue with that.
Yeah. Well, there's and Fabris would argue that as well. So there's different arguments there. That just like you gotta. It's applicable to different situations, and I'm making it applicable to the sport. I'm not making it applicable to like. Do not watch everything I do and then apply it to longsword. Some of it will apply, is universal. Some of it is not. Do not apply it to rapier. It is different. There are different rules associated with that because of the change in the weapon and everything. So it's like, I think people just want to apply like very strict definitions to things, and it takes people a little while to understand. Like, no, there's a whole wide range of things. Well, and everybody has crossed that ground before. I'm not approaching anything new. I am not breaking new ground on anything that hasn't been, and all over the world. It does not matter where you come from. Just because the Europeans wrote a book about it and the Japanese don't have a book about it, doesn't mean they both didn't come across the same concept at some point in the last hundreds or thousands of years. So
yeah, and especially when you get into things like katana or okatana or odachi, the longer ones that actually are decent enough weapons, not the katana. When you get into things like that, there's a lot of similarities with longswords, because you're talking about two humans with two hands on a stick. Like they have to perform certain actions that are similar, right? So yeah, and so a lot of people are going to agree. And I mean, I have 4 different manuals, and then Old Swordplay, which is like 12 different manuals on its own. And they would all disagree on certain things and agree on certain things. There's no one right way to do it. There's a lot of wrong ways, but there's no one right way to do it. And so, yeah, it'd be interesting. I think in order for TSL to set up some kind of like instructor certification program, we would need to have a set like basic manual, and the only certification would be, do you teach this manual? Cool. And then you can add whatever you want on top of that kind of thing. It'd be like a karate school.
I mean, look at
a guy that calls himself like, I know some things, or it's like, hey, I'm just, a dipshit and I figured out some stuff, than the guy that wants to give me his resume and pedigree and all that kind of stuff. And the only stuff that I'll take as, infallible is our Lord and Savior, Alfred Hutton, who Mark brought up earlier.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah, I guess. There we go.
I have 3 of his books.
Yeah, mine's right here.
Alec, where's your copy? Yes!
I have mine digital.
Spread
It
the
is
word.
right here.
Spread the holy word.
Hold them all up at the same time, yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, where is it? There you go.
All right, here we go. Coordinated books.
I pull it up on Kindle because I actually have it downloaded onto here. Where's the app?
But does anyone have the highlighted sections that can rival my copy? I have
No.
all of the highlighted sections. Like
I did do
entire
digital tagging
pages.
on mine, actually.
I have an issue
As
with
many
marking up
tags
books,
as
even
I
though I
did?
should.
Probably not.
Well, so like this one. Well, look at that, Alec. Look at all of the tabs.
Nice.
See, I'm
Yeah, but here we
more
go.
of a have
So
a
my
notebook
thing
next
is
to me
this
and
is-
write notes with page numbers. Oh, okay. Everybody get there on. There you go. Right there.
Yeah, there you
One
go.
more time. There we go.
My
All
little
right.
things.
Yeah.
We're all.
So my thing is that's a $20 book. So something like this, which I bought for, I think it was 30, and it's an old copy. It was the only one on Amazon I could find. I'm not going to mark this one up because it's an old copy. It's hard to find, and it has
No
cool
balls.
pictures of a bunch of
No balls.
swords, and I'm not going to. Has a bunch of the swords in there of what he's talking about, which is really cool to me. But yeah, so that I'm not going to mark up. The Fiore one I'm not going to mark up because I spent way too much money printing that at Staples. But like the George Silver one, I mean, my copy of Sweatham is almost as marked
Yeah.
up as
You're welcome.
the Cold Steel one. Right, yeah, Joe printed that one off for me. So, I mean, for me, it just depends on the book. Like, there are books that
Yeah.
I won't mark up and books that I will. So,
Yeah, my Thibault does not get marked up.
right.
I've
But,
taken the
going back-
Mark's thing of marking it up just because it's easy to. It lives in my saber bag when the world is normal, and it's easy to just
Oh,
bring it out, show someone a highlighted section, say this is why you're dumb. See, read this right here. That's why you're dumb.
so what's great is this is my my fencing lame or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, you are.
The plastron pocket, yeah, right. The plastron pocket, which is right there, is actually the same size as Cold Steel. So I can use Cold Steel as a plastron.
There you go. But
That's
going
actually
back to
beautiful.
people
Alfred Hutton
have to call
protecting me.
themselves masters. Going back to that conversation, like, yeah, I mean,
God.
the real people that are the masters are the people that don't have to tell you that. I mean, like, I found Davenport's European martial arts on, just through the HEMA Alliance Finder. I didn't learn that, like, Stephen Fick's background until, like, I don't know, I was 4 or 5 months into training there, like, and then I realized,
Yep.
oh, he's been fighting for decades. And then I start talking to him about things he knows. I'm like, oh, he knows this stuff like cold and has applied his own personal spin to Fiore and all these other
And
sources.
Sweatman.
And it's like, oh, and he doesn't brag about it. He doesn't talk about it. He'll talk about it if you ask him, but like, he just has it, and he is willing to give that knowledge. And it, obviously I pay for that at the school, but that's the whole intention. But he doesn't like, he doesn't feel the need to, like, have everything, all the accolades on the wall. He just kind of lets it, stand by. Like, so he has a whole library of books. Like, I mean, it's like, dozens and dozens and I don't know, there's probably over, a couple
It's
hundred
an
books,
amazing
like
library.
maybe. And you open up some of them, like I grabbed one off, and like literally there's like, a thing like calling, like, oh, here's a thing from like Guy Windsor, and Guy Windsor, gave him this book, and it says like a specific nickname, and I'm like, what does that nickname mean? And he's like, oh, this nickname meant because he fought in, Italian, and I fought English, and it was like the like I forget what it was. It was like the four something. Like, what's his name? Like, and it was essentially because him and other fighters at the time fought all different styles. So it was like Italian, Spanish, English, and I'm assuming the other one might have been German, but there's not really German rapier, but might have been French as well. But either way,
No matter what Meyer says, it's not a
but
rape.
there's all these little like dedications written in like some of the different books and stuff like that, and then he has like the original like photocopied copies of treatises that were passed around. So like the early days of HEMA, when it was like the dark ages, like it was literally, he still has some of those original things. So there's HEMA history in there. If you look at it, he did a panel at CombatCon in 2019, I think, that was called The Dinosaurs of HEMA. It was like him, Paul McDonald, and like Bob Brooks and somebody else, I forget. But it was it was a really fascinating, just delve into like the ways they had to pass information when there wasn't as much internet communication, and then also there was nobody translating at that time, so they had to figure it out. Right. Some of them had to learn the languages, and then all of those different things, and then getting access to the original treatises if you could in some of the libraries and archives that exist across the world. So
right.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing about like the early days of HEMA. And then he talks about all the times he almost died, and like literally like his heart stopped for a minute and then came back, and all these concussions that he had and stuff like that. So like you think about the shit he did, and it's insane.
Right? Did he ever get into jousting too?
I don't know if he did that. I mean, I know he did a lot of plate armor, just full on melee kind of stuff. But yeah, so there's a lot of stuff he did.
Early Battle of the Nations kind of thing.
Well,
so
I've had I mean, they're not as old as Steven up in Davin Ridge, but down in SoCal, RJ and Miles from South Coast Swords, I've never heard them brag about their resume. It's normally the students telling other people how awesome they are.
Yep.
That's another thing I hate.
Let me find
that out on my own.
Yep.
Especially when, I've met a couple people over the years who teach martial art in one fashion or another, whether that's traditional, modern, historical recreations like HEMA, SCA, whatever the case might be. And there's so many people that brag for their instructors, and it's like, well, let them speak on their own, right? Let them speak up for themselves. Like the, I won't mention names, but the Destreza school up in Sacramento. Let them speak on their own, right? Let me fight the students, see if, because it's cool if you want to brag about your instructor or your school or whatever. But if you brag all that much and then get stabbed in the face repeatedly, it doesn't hold water. Let me see how it actually works. And I think that's more prevalent in the traditional side, the traditional, especially Japanese, Korean, Chinese kind of martial arts. I think that's a little more prevalent.
Yeah, the pedigree comparison contests.
Right, and pedigree means jack all, right? Because it is a long game of telephone, right? You played as a kid, and so things change over time. So what you're teaching, what a modern teacher is teaching now, is definitely not the same as someone who was teaching in the 1600s. I mean, HEMA is very privileged in that because we have the manuals, and aside from certain authors, we can all kind of agree on what they're saying. Maybe an angle is off here, or a block is a little bit different there, but it's all pretty much the same because it's directly from the original instructor. But with the oral traditions, and there are some that come out of the European countries as well, but with the oral traditions, a lot of it is a game of telephone, so it changes. And not only that, sure, you're resting on the feet of giants or on the shoulders of giants, but what can you do? What can you teach? What do you remember? I'd rather judge, pedigree means jack all. It's all about the instructor that's actually there in front of you in mind.
Well, I think another part of it is also people want to feel validated. They want to feel like they're not wasting their time. So they want to talk about how awesome the person they're learning from is.
Right. Yeah, and on the instructor side, I feel like that's also the case because you get the senior student or instructor, and especially with the traditional oral tradition martial arts, you get these people who've been studying for 30 years and what they do doesn't work, but they it's because it's in a new sport or whatever, and they rely on that pedigree as some kind of validation, which is utter crap to me. Like I said, it's what you can do. So yeah, it's a weird one. But getting back to
or what you can do
master
with the
thing,
student, what you can do with the student too.
right?
Like if you there are people that are some of the best teachers out there, and they can produce students that know what they're doing, but they may not be that good of a fighter specifically. Like they don't have
Right.
the physical ability, or there could be a lot of factors to that. But it's
Right.
that's another element of it. Is like what are how much success have your students had? And that doesn't necessarily just need to be like medals and tournaments. There's like other elements of measuring success. If like you are having students go on and they move across the country and they start their own successful schools and everything like that, that's a form of success that definitely exists. And there's evidence of that across all different martial arts. So
especially in the especially in the
Mhm.
oral tradition martial arts, or the more traditional martial arts. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. It's what metric do you use to judge success as an instructor? But like getting back to the master thing in TSL, and it's not just TSL; it's every facet of lightsaber, or anyone who's thought about picking up a lightsaber for combat, air quotes. But like there's a school of in the U.S., no specifics, that the instructor not only is an asshole, but also has no idea what he's talking about. And like, granted, it's on YouTube, it's prevalent, but so being able to judge the master, but also what I was always told, because I kind of grew up doing martial arts, what I was always told by my instructor is that it's like a doctor or something. It's a practitioner. Like you're a medical practitioner when you're a doctor, right? You're practicing. You're getting better. It's the same thing. We're not like martial arts masters. No one is. It's all practitioners because you're constantly practicing, getting better, and learning, and that's part of it. So
and we're starting to see
I
that
think
like in
there's
the
a
medical
huge-
field, like people are not using their titles
Mhm.
now in a lot of clinics, because we're like, wow, this kind of just makes us sound like authoritarian jerks.
Right. And so with the martial arts side, I think one of the big problems we have within the lightsaber community is mindset, right? You want to be called a master because Master Jedi bullshit, right? It doesn't matter. Like the title doesn't matter, and it just means you're a student, you know.
Well, I love
So I mean, I was always told black belts are like starting to learn, in traditional martial arts.
Yeah,
well,
that's
and
what we were taught too.
I love DSL and lightsaber fighting because I love Star Wars and glow sticks, and it's all fun. But as I've shifted
like
more
swords.
into Tahima stuff, I like the idea that it's like the UFC of sword fighting. And I like that, David, Alec, Mark, myself, we're all studying different sword stuff and adapting it to what we do, because is a
Pull up your hunting
lightsaber-
manual.
Right. Is a lightsaber a
Different
one-for-one
sword stuff? We just showed off hunting.
Right. Is a lightsaber a one-for-one replacement for a rapier or a longsword or a saber or whatever? No, but
I
you
try.
can adapt it.
I try.
Right. And people that are like, well, I'm a Form 3 fighter. I'm like, shut up. You're dumb. Because that's not what I
Right.
want to fight. I want to fight other people using, as I've gotten more into wanting to learn, like, practical applications of swords and sword-like objects.
Can I just like say one thing about the forms,
No.
and we don't have to go off on a tangent about this?
Nope.
No. What I'm going to
No
say
forms.
is
No forms.
not a positive thing. This is not a
Yeah.
positive thing about forms.
Okay.
The thing
good.
about forms, because
You
actually
can only speak
Stephen asked
negatively
me,
of forms.
because I've been taking a weekly class with Stephen. He started in the last couple months for LED sabers specifically. And we're mainly doing like side sword and long sword styles with the LED saber. So basically, he was asking me about the forums, and he's like, because he wants to have it open so people can use these real styles and apply them to choreo as well. So you don't have to go in for a martial point of view into the class. And I said, the thing about the forms is that they were to describe what already was supposed to be happening. Like they said, this is Makashi because this is how they fought. It was created around an already existing fight style that they made. Ask Nick Gillard, ask Kyle Rowling, who are the prequels fight coordinators. They will tell you the forms are not a valid way of like applying that to martial arts. You know what I mean? That's not how they designed it. They didn't say, oh, Obi-Wan and Anakin are going to have this big fight and they're all going to fight in Gemso. That's not what they were doing. They were creating based upon their fight styles. They created a cinematic story that they were telling through it. And if you actually talk to, like, say, Kyle Rowling, he can tell you some of the original storytelling things that were part of the, I don't know if he still tells that story or not because he might get in trouble. But I've heard him tell the story. I won't share it, but because he asked people not to. But it's like the original ending to episode 3, and it really tells a different story. But they weren't trying to say like, oh, these are both Gem-So fighters, so they're going to fight like this. It's like, no, they're both evenly matched fighters who trained each other, so they know the same exact form, and this is how they fight. They use this, they use this martial style, and he probably could point to the specific weapons that they were influenced by to create that fight. But it's like, I don't like it because then there's like 3 forms that aren't even realistic in any sense, right? You have a Taru.
People can't do
arguably there are 7 forms that aren't realistic in any sense.
Well, yeah, but I just mean like that's the big thing, is that like they try to bring it into the structure, and then everyone, I understand the appeal of saying like creating your own form 1, creating your own form 2 that is like an actual realistic interpretation. I understand that, but in reality, why do we have to?
As long as it's
First
realistic.
of all, as media marketing head, I will say that is copyrighted information, right? And so if you use the terms Makashi on form 1, form 2, you can get away with, and if it's not anything related to what they have. But if you start using Makashi and all that stuff and Gemso and I can't think of the other ones, but anyway, like you're gonna get into that danger zone. Why do you need to do that? Like, you want to build an organization. As soon as you get big enough, you get someone's attention and you're shut down, and then you got to retool. Just make it so it's not,
and the mouse
so
is
it's its own thing.
Too happy. Yeah, and so the one thing I will give credit to the forums on, and the one way people should use them, is if you're interested in Form 1, and that, like, because I kind of related to, like, if you played Magic
show. That's
or
Form 1.
mini.
Think of it.
No, it's Form 1. It doesn't deserve a name.
Yeah.
But if it's kind of like if you play Magic, right, or mini war games, whatever, come up with a theme, and then you build your deck to work, right? Yeah. Your theme is, I like dragons, I'm going to play dragons, and then you pull the best cards so you can make a competitive deck, right? So what I think is a good way to use those, and the realistically only way that they should be happening, is I like XYZ Jedi, XYZ Sith, they do Form 1. Form 1 is Kendo. I learn Kendo. Something like that. I like Count Dooku. Count Dooku does Form 2. Form 2 is rapier, is fencing, is whatever. Go learn that. Because that actually works. It's not written by someone in their basement.
Yeah. The other argument I'll make for forms is they are great for choreography, because it is a good way to prescribe form 1 is this person, this character. So if you're doing choreo as that character, it makes perfect sense to learn those styles. But do not try to apply solely like the specific movements of it into a martial standing without modification. You can't.
Yeah,
they are not going. They're not A to B.
That's like what I was talking about. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you can A to B this. You can A to B this, but you can't A to B the forms. And I don't have a thing to show the forms. I don't have the Path of the Jedi book here. So.
Because it's garbage.
Well, I don't have it. So
It's a cool piece of collector or whatever, but like as far
trying
as
to think.
any like
That's
learning
the only
sword
Star
fighting,
Wars
it's
book I have
garbage.
right now is like the annotated screenplays of Star Wars. So that's about all I got.
Fair enough. I really like. I don't know if they still make them. Barnes and Noble used to do the leather bound, really nice like books, and they did like
Mhm.
the.
Yes.
I think it was like a Shakespearean version of Star Wars or something like that. Like those I would get because like I'm a fan of Shakespeare. So, but like
Yeah,
I
those are solid.
wouldn't like like I got into lightsabers because I was making a little bit extra money, figured I wanted a lightsaber, and I knew I wanted one that could take a beating because I was going to hit things with it because that's the type of person I am. I got into lightsaber fighting because I like sword fighting. You know, I got no lightsabers on my wall, which I'm sure Dale has his opinions on, but because I stream from Shadowcrest Design, but yeah, no, I mean, if you want to learn sword fighting, which is realistically what we do, learn sword fighting. It's pretty simple,
Yeah.
But like I always say, I will never shame someone for wanting to do a nerd sport because they're getting off the couch, they're getting active, they're getting hopefully healthier, all of that. So if learning, if being inspired by a form is what does it, what tickles your pickle, then you go learn what works for that form and go do it, right? And you get off the couch and you get moving, and hopefully you actually learn something credible about sword fighting. But yeah, it's
And that's the thing. You can't bring strict interpretation. I mean, I was talking about it with someone. If you try to bring these strict interpretations, you're gonna have a bad time essentially because one of my big things that I always say is like, oh, why can I hand an LED saber for the first time to someone who is a very experienced HEMA practitioner, maybe someone who wins tournaments, and everything, right? And why can I beat them? It's because I know the little idiosyncrasies that exist, like, how it bounces, the transfer of energy between blades hitting each other is different than steel, is different than a wooden stick. They are not the same weapon. You can apply techniques to it, but there are things you have to consider in order to, control it. Like we were working on side sword guards, and I was doing unicorn guard. If you know, like unicorn guard is essentially like in cart, and you just like kind of bring it up like quickly to block. And what it does versus steel, because I compared it steel to LED saber, here you're protected, you have the guard, it stops, right? But LED saber, it kind of goes doo, doo, and just like slips down, and it just like slides right, bounces right down. And that's a big difference between it because you have to consider how it's going to bounce, the proper angle. You change the angle slightly, you hit it at a different part of the blade, and it has a different behavior than say with steel, where it's more just about get the right mechanics and it works. Yeah, unicorn card.
Yeah.
Well, and
So.
we even taking us back in time a little bit to a comment Alicia dropped, which was she was saying, I think a lot of it has to do about how the person is bragging. If it sounds like you must join the cult, which Mark has lots to say about lightsaber cults.
I do.
I'll be skeptical.
And sword cults.
If they can specifically quantify what they
That's
know
another.
And how it's helped them to improve, I'll be more interested.
Yeah, if you can speak to the tangible, objective benefits of studying under an instructor, that's different. If all you say is, he's cool, or he won XYZ tournament 30 years ago, or something like that, pass. But yeah, I mean, it is how you speak to the quality of the instructor. Not so much, like, if you have a good instructor and you say, yeah, they're a good instructor, then that's fine. But if they're the best instructor because they study Fabrice, even though Fabrice is garbage, and it's the best, and like, their specific interpretation is the best, and it wins everything, even though our school has no trophies or medals. Like, come on, Like, show me the tangible evidence. Like, it's the what is it? Missouri. Getting back to Missouri, you made the comment earlier. Missouri's the show me state, right? It's show me the evidence. Show me what you're talking about. Don't tell me. Show me. And
it doesn't have to be medals for that. It all depends what you're doing. There are those
right.
more that are about historical interpretations, and they want to be historically accurate. Or like, as far as, I forget the school in New York that was it Mike Edelson, did the old cutting book, and he essentially brought cutting to America, are they not? I'm not counting the cutting tournaments because but like, they probably have won some tournaments and things like that, but that's another way to show it. They created a whole new section of the sport to work within. That's another thing you can show off as, like, that this is something I produced that is very effective, that changed the sport.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. And to me, like, winning tournaments is a form of that, right? Because it's all about what impact do you have on the community, right? Whether that's, maybe you wrote a book, maybe you translated a manual, maybe you developed a new section of it, like cutting, or something like HMB, or Battle of the Nation, something like that. But if you win a tournament and you're theoretically using historical techniques, that is going to have an impact on things, right? Unless you have a school that only does katas, only does non-sparring, non-competitive, non-whatever, it is going to have an impact. Whether that is, oh, well, we didn't think about holding unicorn guard up at an angle pointed towards the face instead of down towards the chest, right? And this fighter won a tournament and they were angling up at the chest or up at the face. Let's explore the historical relevance of that, see how that applies, see if that is a more accurate interpretation or more realistic standpoint of what they were doing at the time. Tournaments can have just as big of an impact on this, because like I was talking about in my last live stream, it is that final element, that torture testing of your interpretations. So, like, when you interpret it, it's drills, it's sparring, and it's tournaments. The tournaments are the torture test to see if your interpretation actually holds up. And then, like you were talking about with the difference.
Sorry. Kevin said Mark was a good instructor until he left me. So. I just wanted to add that in. Go ahead, continue with your point.
Fair enough. But to that point, there was it was an instructor back east, and I can't remember who was saying it, but they were saying that you are not a credible instructor, credible practitioner, unless you're using sharps. Now, not necessarily in tournaments and all that, but you need to have some experience in sharps, whether that's cutting. I mean, just like for those of us who have used sharps, just cutting air, you get a lot of feedback with sharp that you don't get with blunt. And it's the idea of, should I use a fetter or should I use a longsword blunt? How does this bind with a fetter versus a sharp? And it's going to have different interactions. So to me, aside from being able to, slice people on the flat of the blade, LEDs are just as credible for sword fighting, or the LED sabers are just as credible for sword fighting as like a fetter, right? Because neither of them are sharps. Neither of them are actually the weapon that you're talking about. So depending on your mindset, you can get just as much good training out of a LED saber as a fetter or a fetterized version of whatever, because like the gymnasium sabers are essentially fetterized versions of military sabers. The foils are fetterized versions of small swords. It's all the same thing. It's just the practice version, right? And so since you're not using it, and it all translates. And to me, how I explain it to people who are maybe SCA or HEMA or whatever, is that what TSL does to me is worst case sword fighting. It is the doubles, like you don't have time for an afterblow, because worst case scenario, you might not. Although worst case scenario, maybe your opponent does, right? But, worst case scenario, does a cut like this onto the back of the hand, is that going to disable your hand? Maybe not, but maybe it does. And worst case scenario, any touch is potentially disabling, right? Because you might go into shock, you might cut a nerve, you might lose too much blood, or not a nerve, a tendon. You might lose too much blood. Like, we cannot simulate the effect that it has on the body. And coming from like a gun background, that's a big problem with like simunitions and things like that. All these training tools is we can't accurately simulate. Like, there are people who, obviously you can pick up a great book, Swordsman of the British Empire, or a book like Sword Through the Centuries, that is going to tell you, like, yes, in the 1500s, there was a Spaniard came over to England for a tilt, had a sharpened dag on his warhammer that he wasn't supposed to, but he bitched and moaned until they let him fight with it. Dag ended up going through the plate armor, through his wrist, through the chainmail, through the plate armor of the Englishman. But then you get other examples of dags just glancing off breastplates. So one of the big problems with all lethal, whether that is, or martial concepts, is, coming from unarmed background like Alec, if you hit someone, or two people are going to interact, or two people are going to react the same way. Coming from a sword background, if you stab someone or you cut someone, are two people going to interact or react the same way? Coming from a gun background, same thing. It's like, so we can't judge how human bodies are going to react. So to me, lightsabers are kind of that worst case scenario for a lot of things.
Well, and I mean, you talked about the unarmed aspect, right, Mark? Alec, you've done the most unarmed stuff here. Would you agree the fact that MMA compared to boxing has shown us how easy it is to drop someone? Because in boxing, you can see people eat shots to the head for 8 rounds.
Oh, yeah.
A good one in MMA, and, they're down.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, MMA has been a very interesting experiment in efficacy. Actually, when we were talking about what does the master bring to the community, like you look at the Gracie family in regards to jiu-jitsu, which was for a long time really not on the map in terms of something that a lot of people considered a popular martial art. And regardless of if you consider their form of jiu-jitsu the best form of jiu-jitsu, they added into the community an entire thing that a lot of people kind of disregarded for a while. So not only did that show that, oh yeah, getting dropped is very different outside of a boxing match, it also showed that, yeah, grappling is very different than we thought it was.
Yeah. Yeah, and
that's the big thing. Sorry, I was just going to say, like, sport's going to evolve and change as you incorporate those different styles. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's something going through the Marine Corps martial art program. But if you look at the Israeli version of Krav Maga, or the Russian Sistema, which is their military martial art, or I can't remember the name of it, but it's their version of MMA. I can't remember the name of it. But if you look at the military ones, you look at these techniques, and they are designed to cross the board put people down, right? And that is a big difference in like if you read the historical manuals versus what's done in maybe sport, or what is taught in a lot of more modern, like fencing, right? More modern sports. You look at like George Silver. If you can actually get a hit in, because George Silver, if you can actually get a hit in, it's designed to put people down, because he has a military background theoretically. a lot of sword fighting experience theoretically, and it is designed to put people down. But then if you look at Cold Steel, which is that's actually a great example, Hutton, right? Because he wrote so many books. In the example of Cold Steel, which is his sport version, versus Swordsman, like lessons for fighting an uncivilized enemy or whatever it's called. Swordsman is the main title. But if you compare the two, the techniques that you find in Swordsman aren't as effective in sport, but they'll put people down 9 times out of 10. The techniques you find in Cold Steel work amazingly in sport, but a lot of them, like a good example is how he does his cuts. He's, starting from the middle guard, coming in and doing like push cuts or draw cuts a lot of the time. Are those going to put people down every time? No. So what he talks about in Swordsman is the bigger hacking cuts, right? So there's a difference, and a lot of what's being taught nowadays, not so much in HEMA, because a lot of the schools are focusing on the sword manual, but like Kendo, which is sport, your Aido, which is sport, versus Aijitsu, which is martial art, your fencing, Olympics, systems of fencing. A lot of those are sporterized, and they'll get the point. But are they a martial art? I don't think so, because they are not designed to put people down. The most efficacy, right? The most guarantee that you can get from something, right? Whereas you pick something like Sweatinum, can it put people down? Yeah, sure, but it's meant for more of the duel, right? Maybe not to the death. You're getting the first point. It's not designed.
Yeah, it's definitely not designed for that. No, it's designed to hit people like right here. Because in England, the whole point of that, as I've always was taught with doing all this Sweatinum I did in the last few months, it's like, he designed it because it was like, okay, to duel was legal, to kill was illegal. So you could, if you inadvertently, hit someone in the neck and they die, you're going to jail for murder. If you just stab them here and they get an infection and they die, that's not your fault,
Right.
So like that's why a lot of times most of Sweatinum is like you hit them right here. It's a squishy bit. It'll bleed. It probably won't cause any permanent problem as far as like they bleed out or something like that. So.
And in true like a Screama fashion, it also gives you openings for further hits, though. So a lot of these can be used in that concept as well, that death by 1,000 cuts kind of that concept. That like traditional Screama schools teach, right? The ones that are actually referencing the machetes, the longer knives, things like that, or even just using sticks as actually a self-defense weapon rather than the sporterized concepts that a lot of schools in general across the board for martial arts talk about. So you could use some of those as openings for further hits. And I think Sweatinum does reference that in his manual. And it's the same thing if you compare like Fiore to Meyer. I would be more scared walking into a ring fighting someone who practices Meyer, because I know if I let them touch me, it's probably cutting something off or in half or something like that. Whereas Fiore, I'd be more scared because they're going to touch me and I can't touch them, kind of thing, which is, or they're going to touch me and then grapple, which is no one really wins in a real grapple. Like, like George Silver talks about that actually, but it's a different concept, which the term martial art gets thrown around so much today, and most of the population never gets into these situations. And if they do, it's a one-off. It's not on a regular basis. And so I think the same as swords back in the 60s, 70s weren't, like in pop culture, they were more magical, they were more mystical. No one knew what they actually did for the most part, unless you live in certain countries. But then nowadays, we have the historical manuals. There's videos and first-hand accounts of knife fighting or machete fighting. Like there was one in England that was circulating a little while ago where two guys in the streets with machetes. There's so many more firsthand accounts that we can add validity to this and understand them in a real world concept. Whereas a lot of martial arts are still viewed in that way. If the mystical mumbo jumbo doesn't actually work, but it looks cool and all that stuff. And also to caveat everything I'm saying with, if you want to learn choreographed dance, right, and you're going to a school that only does katas, right, you want to learn choreographed dance because you want the physical exercise, you want the meditation, you want the discipline, whatever, cool, go do that. I'm not discouraging that at all. But understand that's not fighting, right? That's not combat. That's why, like, whenever I say combat LED or combat lightsabers or whatever, it's always with air quotes because it's not, right? It's a sport at best. And at some places, it's choreographed dance. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but, it's there's got to be that understanding of that's what you're getting out of it,
Look like
there's definitely
I
was just gonna say add to that what Mark was saying, and then I'll sorry. Like one thing I've always said is that I don't, a lot of times you watch me fight or Mark fight, since I guess out of all of us we probably have the most film on us, is that like it's not really good. We don't look good fighting, right? But even when I pull off moves that I know are like something I've practiced, a specific play or a specific timing or technique, it never looks good. If you want to look good with an LED saber, please do fight choreography. I've done it. Yeah. It looks really good. It can look really good. I mean, I did a good chunk of the Mustafar sequence and did Obi-Wan stuff, and it looks good. It looks good on film. It feels good. But I think I prefer what happened is I preferred the how it felt to pull off those difficult things, those one-off scenarios. Where I get the timing right, I get the movement right, I hit the right part of their blade if I'm doing some type of technique with that, and it just moves right in. Like one of the ones I feel like the best of is when I was fighting Christian at TSL 4, and sometimes he gets in like a circular kind of thing like this. It was no, I yelled after that because I came from a 3-point deficit and won by like 3 points. Yep. So like so that was really why, because yes, that's part of it. But like there's other elements to why that fight shifted, and I've kind of explained that on my show. But he does he does this circular thing, right? And I knew my stringere from Italian rapier, and I was like, okay, he's gonna do this. If I start and I'm gonna aim right here on his body, I start when his blade is here. He'll be here. And I pulled it off perfectly, and it looks like garbage on film. It just looks like I just thrust it and hit him. It doesn't, but it was the best feeling, probably one of the top 3 like moments in TSL was like me pulling off like a perfect stringere where it was just like there was not a thing he could do to protect himself. It was just, and that's that kind of like if you were in combat, that's like that instant, like you get the hit in, and it's like that takes that one hit. But like I always say that like, I like how it feels, even if it doesn't look as good, which is why like it's okay if people want to try cool looking things, right? But they need to understand that they will not necessarily be successful. They will not have the success. And in my opinion, it doesn't, if you try one of those, dynamic movements and it fails, I think that feels a lot worse than if it succeeds. I think it looks that much worse. If you try to slide in your knees and they just hit you across the forehead and it snaps your head back, you're going to look like an idiot, and you're going to feel like an idiot. And obviously, I'm not saying don't ever do it. And I know Alec is probably like, hey, wait, I did that and it failed on me. I know there's a tournament that you did that.
I absolutely did that at Crush Zotica because it was like, last point, he had a pike. I needed to get inside.
So like, and there are times for you need more dynamic movements and things like that. But like, it's just that I would say yes in those clutch situations where you have to quickly score because you have 5 seconds and you have to go, you might need to do something a little crazy, and I understand that. As long as it's safe.
Match,
as long as
I was not like even touching that
yeah,
stuff.
you don't need to do that if it's like 1 point difference between you and it's halfway through the match. There's no reason to do that. Like, you have time. You have, like, you can be down 3 points halfway through a match and you can win by more than 3 points. I did it against a very difficult opponent, and and why was that? Because he changed his style to try to prevent, prevent getting more points against him. And by doing that style change, I was able to analyze what he was doing, and boom. So and that feels a lot better, in my opinion, than if I had done spinny, jumpy moves or things like that. Just, I know that's like an opinion, but
I'm
like,
not proud of that point either. It's like, that was one that was like, I was desperate. I needed to went for it.
I'm not trying to totally
I'm not taking it as a
put that
criticism.
stuff down.
My favorite point I ever scored was in Florida Cup, probably a couple months before that. I hit a textbook perfect shield how, where the other person was not even near me after I completed the block, and the point ended right on their mask. I was so proud of myself. It felt amazing, and it looked like, oh yeah, he blocked and cut him. Cool.
Well, and I think that's where the appreciation for that kind of stuff comes from. If you understand the technical aspect, things can be technically beautiful, but Hollywood does a great job of dressing up sword fighting and making it look sexy. When I used to do a lot more choreo stuff, I used to tell people there's a difference between actually fighting and the flashy, trashy stuff.
Oh yeah, and like I have gotten some good exchanges with people. I've gotten, I've done some flashy things, not on purpose, but like the big two that stick out in my mind was with Kevin Cook last year, with the the hand on the floor stab up to the chest area. I can't remember what they're called. I know Hutton does.
Did you do Sabasa, or were you stepping back?
Maybe. No, stepping forward. It's
forward, like Pasada Soto.
Well, Hutton does it going backwards, but it's you end in the same position. The difference is Hutton is going backwards with it. It is, but you end in that position. Where's the camera?
Oh, that's that's like a Pasada.
But going
that's a Pasada
forward.
Soto. Yep.
Okay.
Pasada Soto in Italian school. Yep.
Right, and then the other one is I got a full Volta at TSL5 and stabbed the guy in the chest. And again, both of those, with the Pasada Soto, I ended up jacking up my thigh for like 2 weeks after that because I don't stretch. But both of those, if I had failed to do them, I would have looked like a complete jackass.
Yeah.
But also, you can gauge it based on audience reaction. Those two got bigger reactions out of the audience than I've ever seen. Oh, let me do an Obiani into a strike. Like, okay, cool, you spun, but you could have just bopped him. It would have done the same thing. Now that's just one example, and it's not the most flourishing.
You'll only see me
right?
do flourish Obianis. You see me do it a couple times. You only see me do it when it literally does not matter.
Right.
Like whether I'm losing or winning, like it will be in garbage time, as we call it, like where it's like final exchange and there's a 2 point difference. It does not matter what happens in this exchange.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's like in our tag team fight, I tried to do the broadsword. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to do the broadsword thing at our tag team rematch, whatever, when we got the belts.
When you hit the ceiling.
It was the last point. We had enough of a lead. I tried it. I hit the ceiling. I pulled it down. I laughed. I got hit, I think, and then I fell over on the ground and did dramatic death. Because it's like, well, we won this fight. I just have to stand here. But also, I'm fully on board with there's 2 points. You have 2 points ahead. Leave the ring. Don't get injured. Don't put yourself out there for that. But that's my opinion.
Well, 9 times out of 10, if I'm gonna hit someone on the last move, it's gonna be like a reverse lunge as they come into me, or I'm going to step slightly to the side or something like that if they're gonna charge at me. Like any of that kind of stuff, I'm just going to do a defense, a counter, some type of counter move. Because it's just easier. Like, just do the reverse lunge. I drop into that. I've stepped back a little bit in distance. I'm firmly planted. If they walk into it, great. Nothing's probably going to happen to me, and I can still move out of the way. But yeah, if you are up 1 point and they call final exchange, run out of the ring. We've said it before. If there's a 1 point differential, run. Just
You're
do
hearing
not
that from a
just step out of the
director.
ring. Like, it's legal. There's no
director's
penalty
hat
for
is
it.
on.
There's no penalty for
And
it.
that
It's
does end
playing
the exchange.
Yeah. At the end, as soon as you call
And
hold,
honestly,
I mean, like,
it's safe.
yeah.
I think
It's safer.
David, I think we're hitting pretty close to your out, aren't we?
Pretty much, yeah. We're getting there. So probably in the next, let's wrap up in the next like
3 hours
5-6 minutes.
Okay.
We're not at
Yeah,
3
but I'm the
hours.
only
What
one
are you
here
doing?
with I'm the
This
only
is
one here
standard
with
stat,
kids,
buddy.
and
That was your choice.
I was, but I'd
Should've
also still
planned
like to be
accordingly.
married. I know I'm not the only one married here, so
That is also
you know.
your choice.
It was. I enjoy it so far.
Yeah, well.
Mhm.
If
Give it
anybody
time.
has
Maybe
any
we're
last-
Yeah, wow.
caveat so far before this airs.
Edit
Right,
for
right.
premiere.
No, it's all good.
So
I've been married
don't
for
like
14 years,
spouting
so
bullshit.
it's not a,
Yeah.
But okay. But yeah, the big things, like I think that's like how people, if there's one thing I could change, like I do all these TSL bad habits, there's one thing I could change. I wish I could get rid of the suicidal, like crazy attacks. It doesn't mean people can't do anything flashy, because you can do it without being suicidal. But like, if just people
Right.
put themselves at risk because they saw one person do this move and they did it effectively, even though it was a little more flashy, but then someone tries it again. Like I know, like Gerard's behind the back, like spin back move, right? Which I don't necessarily like that much, but it works. It works for in certain scenarios, right? But then I saw people mimicking that at TSL4. There's a multiple matches I saw where, and then literally I remember one where somebody did that spin in a 2-step spin instead of a 1-step spin. And on the second step, they were against Nate Hill from Ohio, and he just goes pop and just pops him right in the head,
Right,
and it's
well,
like, you just spun with your energy into his saber that he hit you in the head with. I mean, they were fine. There was no problem, but it's like, imagine if Nate had just stuck out his blade and stabbed him in the head. That might have been a little bit worse,
Or in
and
the
it wasn't
ribs.
his fault.
well, I mean,
Yeah, or hit him in the
imitation-
back or something like that.
Imitation without understanding the technique's a thing, right? It's part of the reason Mark understood what he was doing with the hammer style strikes and the, I'm going to butcher this, the Montanti, whatever.
Montante.
Montante styled swings. He knew what he was doing. He trained, he practiced, he put in the hours. Other people going, that looks cool, and doing it
Yep.
liable to hurt someone.
Well, because at that point I was fighting, leading up to TSL 2, I was fighting like at least 5 times a week. A lot of those nights were with exotics, and a lot of those nights were actually in a light touch group. So I was doing a lot of those, like Montante, the single-handed, like around orbits or whatever you want to call them. I was doing a lot of those in a light touch group. And so transitioning into TSL, I didn't injure anyone. I pulled the shots just fine, no problems. But yeah, then other people, not mentioning names, but other people who didn't have the same level of understanding, who didn't have the experience, and frankly didn't have the muscles for it. Because it takes a lot of force to pull back on that Yari to make it safe. And they ended up getting the only power call, I think, that at TSL2 during the exotics. There were some others like throat shots that got called, and things like that. Obviously, that's always going to happen. But
I will say
power
I have the
call.
worst throat shot in TSL, but I was wearing a metal gorget, so I wasn't badly injured.
Right.
That was probably the hardest throat shot in TSL, and I'm including Brian Freeman getting stabbed with the Red Dragon, because that wasn't a hard shot. It just didn't have a proper gorget on. I had a proper gorget on. I had a sore throat for like a week, and this was like literally, think if you just threw your pike forward. That's how hard it was hit. I mean, it was straight in, no blocks. because it was like literally just a kind of thing, and it was like
Yep.
that, yeah. But yeah,
And
so like
shortly after or before TSL, it was one of the first dark watches. I fought Daniel Esquivel, and he, like most people in TSL, for whatever stupid fucking reason, blocks up into the throat or blocks down into the stomach, right? He happened to block up into the throat. I shot forward with the pike. He guided it right into his gorget. It went underneath the bib, hit him in the gorget, and he went down. Like, it hit him hard enough that it looked like I'd hit him with a hammer in the gorget. And
yeah.
you know, if that shot had hit its intended target, or even if it had hit the bib first, I think it would have been a fine shot. But because of the circumstances of it, and where it landed, it bypassed the protective gear. You know, it's the same thing like when I fought Ivan Rodriguez. He was wearing or one of the many times, he was wearing super minimalistic gear, and walking out of our championship series fight, which also was a 35-minute fight because the table got the times wrong. And I was done after that fight. But walking out of that fight, his entire bicep was black and blue because it bypassed the gear, right? But like, yeah, no, I mean, the one piece of advice I will give to any fighter, whether you're going into your first sparring match at a charter meet, or you're going into TSL 5 and you're experienced, or you know, whatever the case is, one piece of advice I will give to every fighter is, you know, always have safety as a concern, right? Always have safety as a concern. If you're worried about maybe you're fighting unsafely, don't. If you're worried about your own safety, change what you're doing. You know, for example, like the flying squirrel, right? When Jesse fought David Ortiz, I was in David Ortiz's corner. They sounded 30 seconds left on the clock. I think it was the last point anyway. And I like grabbed David on the shoulder because he was in the corner. And I told him, like, hey, look, he's going to do the flying squirrel. Point it at his face, track him on the way down. Simple as that. And David's shot hit, like, roughly on the forehead, slid off, jammed him in the collarbone, and you can see it on the video. Jesse's body twists on camera. And, like, that is not fighting safely. Other than walking out of the ring, that's the only thing David could really do to be safe for himself. And sometimes you have to prioritize your own safety, right? Because they're doing something dumb. Like Tom Amoroso said, for every fight he directed, that I was in at least, he reminded the fighters that they are responsible for their own safety.
Right.
And so was that the safest thing he could have done for Jesse? No. But it was the safest thing he could do for himself, because if those flying squirrels, the spins, the suicidal attacks, a lot of them are also going to hit the target a lot harder than they should. Because in a spin, like if you spin full body into a strike, then that's your centrifugal force, it's your force of the body moving forward, in addition to that cut. And, you know, credit to the fighter, they might be able to stop a cut safely. But now you're dealing with a lot more inertia in play. And it's the same thing in all the videos I do when I talk about thrust. I talk about bending the elbow, putting a bend in the elbow so you're not putting your entire body weight behind it. Because, I mean, you can break bones, you can break whatever you're hitting if you put your full body weight behind it, and it's not going to feel that hard to you. Every shot that I've been called on for power for thrust, it doesn't feel like I'm hitting very hard. And most of the time I'm not actually hitting hard, it just looks like it. But like with the simple locking out of the elbow, so all that power generation goes through the arm into the body and all that energy gets transmitted, like you can break people doing that. But all these suicidal attacks, not only are they dangerous for the person doing it, but they're dangerous for the target. Really, the only thing that you can do safely is either stop them from doing what they're doing, like David did, or back out of range. And sometimes that's not going to be your first instinct. Like there was a fight at TSL3 that when fight was called, we were actually within range of hitting each other without moving our feet. I couldn't back out of the ring because I was in a corner. It shouldn't have been called. There were other people in the audience. Person who was in my corner, they contested, but whatever, didn't get overruled. But it was not my first instinct to back out. And like I was at a state in my head that that wasn't even on the docket, for backing out. So sometimes that's not going to happen. So I don't blame any fighter who does a stop cut or stop thrust and stops their opponent's action. Even if it might hit hard.
All right, let's do the last thoughts on this. Alicia said, I've lost fights because I felt pulling a hit was safer than getting my head knocked off or seriously injuring my opponent. So it's the same thing. Like, yeah, I feel bad if I injure someone as well. Like that's, I get indignant about it. I'm like, I get indignant because I'm just like, how dare you dumbass. You put me in a position where I hurt you because I'm trying to just get the point and do it in a effective and safe way, and then you do something unsafe and put yourself at risk and put me at risk, and I didn't try to, it's like if someone like spun and then I hit him in the back of the head and their back of the head protection sucks or something like that, or I hit him in the spine or something like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like
TSL4.
it's just yeah.
Like TSL4 with our last tag team fight, my reaction walking away was, what the fuck are they doing? How dare they, they were doing,
jump into your thrust.
Soccer, right. They were doing the soccer lay on the ground, cry about it thing. But at the same time, they put themselves in that situation and caused that to happen. And you were the one I was talking to during that. Like, how dare they do that? How dare they fight that unsafely? How dare they cause that to happen? And granted, I put that on my opponent a lot more than I maybe should, but at the same time, it takes two to tango, right?
Yeah. Well, like David said, we're running on time. Thank you guys.
No, we got another 2 hours, right?
Be quiet, Mark.
Nope.
Enough of you.
No, I saw the notification. My wife just got home, so I got to wrap.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Looks like the takeaway for this first episode is your opponent isn't just responsible for your safety. You're responsible for your safety, too. Make good life choices. Thanks for checking out the first episode of what I think we're calling Chatting Round the Fireside. There might be another one eventually.
No, it was Under the Bridge.
Under the Bridge.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Under the Bridge.
Under the Bridge.
Rebranding Under the Bridge. That's right.
Yeah.
So
I don't ever want to feel like I did that day.
Yeah.
No,
I
got it. Okay.
For
right.
I thought you were
for the first episode.
I was
don't get your
quoting
references, Dave.
For the first
Fair
episode of Under the Bridge. Enough of you all. Stop.
No, you can't make me.
Yes, I can. I can.
Actually, you can. You can cut the.
In summary, the last thing I'll say is that when we salute, at a match, in my school, we say when we're saluting with someone, we are saying thank you for fighting me, and thank you for keeping me safe. And those are the two things we say when we don't say it verbally, but we're expressing with the salute. Is that it's like thank you for this and thank you for keeping me safe, and you make that mutual agreement. So more people think like that, where the opponent you have, they are giving you the opportunity to fight them, whether it's in a sparring or a tournament scenario. Thank them for keeping you safe, and then you do the same for them, and then we don't have these issues. There's always the one-offs, but they won't happen as commonly if we all come in with that mentality. So
Love it.
Cool. I'm done.
All right, taking us out one more time. Thanks for tuning in first episode.
Wait, I gotta interrupt.
Muting Mark. For Mark Carico, Alec Martinez, and David. This has been first episode. Thank you for tuning in. I've been Joseph Pavlenko. We'll catch you guys.
That was fancy.
Later.
Super.